Hello and welcome back to Inside the Mind. Now, you'll notice with today's podcast and podcasts going forward, the things are a little bit different and they look and feel different and the conversation is a little bit different. I'm going to explain why. Six months ago, I was asked the question of where do you want your podcast to be in 6 months' time? And this sort of brought about a lot of introspection, both personally as well as just creatively. And I asked myself, is my podcast giving me the output that I think is of value to my audience? I ultimately came to the answer that no, that wasn't the case. So I decided that to look elsewhere in terms of inspiration, as well as also figure out what I want my podcast to be. So I did two things. I reached out to someone called by the name of Stephen Bartlett, who has the UK's #1 podcast, which is called Diary of a CEO. And I drew a lot of inspiration from that. Because I've always been a very entrepreneurial-minded person and someone who loves gaining a lot of feedback and information from those who are incredibly successful. So that's what I think the podcast is going to be. It's certainly going to be a lot more forensic and a lot deeper in terms of understanding the hidden lessons, some of the truths about these people's lives, and what went into them becoming so successful. So I hope that you really are going to enjoy today's podcast, which is with Ahren Posthumus. Ahren is a young South African who's achieved incredible deal at such a young age. He was rated GQ Innovator of the Year in 2020. He was a Mail and Guardian top 200 young South Africans in 2020. And he's also won Investec Entrepreneur of the Year. He now he's on his third business venture now, which is called MoMint, which is an NFT marketplace. And it's certainly something that I actually perceive one day becoming a unicorn in South Africa. I hope that you really enjoyed today's podcast. I got a lot of value out of it. And please do me a favor. Please like and subscribe below. It helps more than you can imagine. And without further ado, let's go inside the mind of Ahren Posthumus. Ahren, welcome to Inside the Mind. One of the things that sort of in this new format that I'm going to start doing a lot more is finding out a little bit more about the foundations of people.
Yeah.
When you build a house, there's a foundation, then you build the house from there onwards or whatever. So I kind of want to understand what happened in your life to make you such a successful person and what it was that brought it about. So I kind of want to start in the start because your name is very interesting.
Okay.
What is it?
My name, Ahren.
And then your surname?
Ahren Posthumus. So Ahren actually translates into eagle, and posthumous directly translates from Latin into after death. So, and then my middle name is Joshua, which it means leader. So string it all together, it means eagle leader after death. I think that's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And where did you grow up? Tell me about your upbringing.
So I grew up in Kimberley. Kimberley is a small diamond mining town, famous for a massive diamond rush that happened there. But obviously, just like every other mining town, all of the natural resources get exported and not much stays in the town. So it's really small town, very Afrikaans, still a little bit backwards. Internet came to us a little while later than the rest of the world. I mean, South Africa was delayed and then we were delayed behind South Africa.
Yeah.
But still, for all of it's one of those things where people from Kimberley like to trash on Kimberley, but secretly it has like a special place in your heart. It's a great place to grow up. Small community, you can ride around bicycles to your friend's house, so it has benefits.
Yeah. And how long did you live there for?
So I grew up in Kimberley until about grade 3 when my parents got divorced. Then we moved to Johannesburg and lived in Joburg for 6-7 years. Yeah, till grade 7, right? And then moved back to Kimberley after that.
Yeah, and I want to provide like a little bit of context into you because I realized we just jumped into it.
Yeah.
You are, it's one of those things, you've been on my radar for a very long time to have a podcast with you. And I think especially now with your new company, I think it's now the right sort of time for us to be having this podcast because I think you're 26 years old?
Yeah.
What you've achieved, if you look at your resume, it is beyond crazy. So for those you don't know, Ahren is a GQ Innovator of the Year in 2020, top 200 young South Africans, Mail and Guardian Editor's Choice in what year was that, 2021?
2020 as well. Yeah.
2020 as well. And then there was one more accolade, which I'm forgetting, out of many.
Investec maybe that one.
Yeah, it was
Investec
Investec
Entrepreneur Leader of the Year or something.
Yes, it was that. So it's definitely a podcast I'm really looking forward to, because you don't really find a lot of young people achieving so many great things so often.
Thank you, you're making me blush.
But one of the things that struck out to me that you said in an interview somewhere, I was always destined to be great. So I always had an idea that I was destined to do something great.
Yeah.
When did that come about, and when did you learn that?
Well, when you say always, I think you kind of mean always, right? Like there was, I always felt like I needed to do something meaningful with my life, you know, and I do mean always. Like I don't remember not having that feeling. And in some ways it almost feels like pressure, right? Pressure that you apply on yourself. You're like, I am a failure unless I'm able to do something impactful or meaningful with my life. So I do think that sometimes from the outside, it looks like you've achieved so much, but on the inside, it's like, I haven't achieved anything yet. Like how much real meaningful impact have I made? And I'm just getting started, you know, that's kind of how I feel internally.
And sort of where did that come from? Was that coming from, I don't know, what was your environment sort of growing up?
Sure.
Did it stem from that, or?
Sure. So the one thing that I think it may come from, right, was my mother and father got divorced when I was in grade 2. Like I said, grade 3 moved to Joburg, but they got divorced because my father was an alcoholic. And after they got divorced, I still remember it very clearly. I have strangely crystal memories of it, like very, very young. And one of them was my mom telling me, well, you're the man of the house now. Like you need to be the man of the house. And we've reflected upon this, you know, speaking about it in our family. And I don't think she meant it very seriously. I think she might have just been joking and saying like, you're the man of the house now. You know, I've grew up with 2 older sisters and my mom. So I was the boy, like I was technically the male of the household. But I think when I heard that at 6-7 years old, I felt like that was a point of responsibility. Now it's my job to look after people. It's my job to make sure that we're well provided for. And this definitely fed into being an entrepreneur, because we would go to the shops. We were not very financially privileged. My mother comes from a poorer background. And then obviously she was a single mom. There was no help from my father, and we moved to Joburg on our own. And I would be the one in the shops where she would be like, do you want this chocolate? And I'm like, no, we can't buy chocolate. Like, I can't afford that. You know, these useless expenses, save the money, you know? And literally in grade 3, started selling like Drinko Pops and things at school. Drinko Pop has a really great margin. You buy them from Macro in bulk, 50 cents. You sell them for R1. You're doubling your money, man. Like, why, you know? Also sold Heelys when that was a trend. I actually got in trouble at school for selling BB guns as well. I went to Chinatown. Listeners might not believe this, but I promise you, I negotiated a price, R3.50 per gun. Like for a plastic pellet gun, R3.50, man, incredible. That's crazy. Sell it for like 15 Rand. That's an even better markup. So I got in huge trouble. Obviously, like weapons dealing at school is no joke. So I wasn't allowed to sell the guns anymore. So all I did was I sold the service to fix them, because I had a whole bunch of spare guns now. So I was like, I could swap out the springs and the plastic parts. And I was like, well, I can still do that. You know, I'm not technically selling guns. So I think that did feed into being an entrepreneur from a young age, you know, trying to make sure that I could financially provide, even though, you know, at that stage it ends up being pocket money. But
and what school did you go to? Was it the school also sort of bred that like sort of excellence thing?
So I do think the school picked up on it. So I went to Saxon World Primary School, a really, really great school in Johannesburg. What was really great for me as an individual, and I hope we can talk about this transparently, is that Kimberley was very backwards, very Afrikaans, very white. And racial tension, I think, is still something that's very alive and well in smaller towns like that. And moving to Joburg and going to Saxon World Primary School was an incredible experience for me, because I was essentially the only white kid in the school. And I only say that because it gave me exposure to a lot of other different cultures, a lot of different types of individuals. And it really opened up my worldview in a really healthy way, I think. So great school, and definitely when I started getting to grade 6 and grade 7, the school did notice what I tended towards. And I was put through leadership programs. I was head boy of the school in grade 7. I think I got like one of those cringy awards. It's like most likely to succeed or something, but I don't want to talk about that. Let's move on.
Yeah. But the only reason I ask it is because I've always noticed a very clear thing with entrepreneurs, because I had the same thing where you started at a very, very young age, just hustling.
Yeah.
Mine was, I'll never forget it. It was grade 5. We had an entrepreneurship day. And in our entrepreneurship day, I went to Butler's Pizza and I sent them a letter and I said, hey, I'm having this entrepreneurship day. Could you please donate a couple of pizzas to me? And they were like, I only asked for like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
They ended up donating like 30 pizzas.
Nice.
Worth like magnums or whatever. We had the highest ever profits that grade 5s had ever gotten that day. And that was a day like this sort of like entrepreneurial.
The flame was lit,
man. And I say kudos to my school for doing that, because I think if that had never been a thing in my life, I would have never had that spark. So I was kind of wondering whether it was the same sort of thing for you. And I'm glad to know that, or hear that that is the case.
Yeah.
Sort of fast forwarding a little bit, your interests, where did it start? So obviously after high school, you go to UCT.
Yeah.
What did you study at UCT?
So at UCT, I studied computer science and business science. So I was between law and computer science. Those were my 2 primary interests. I did IT as an extracurricular in high school because they didn't offer it in the normal curriculum. So I was always very interested in computers, specifically around video games, which I think is a starting point for many people when they want to learn how to code or how they get into programming. It's because you play games and you're like, well, I want to make my own, or I want to edit this, I want to change things. So that is where it came from for me. But I also had a very strong and keen interest in law. I did debating and public speaking quite successfully, and I always enjoyed debating and public speaking, and that therefore law aligned with me very well. And the sole reason why I chose computer science was because I was like, I don't want to defend someone who's guilty ever. That morally, I think to be a lawyer, you have to have a flexible moral compass. And I don't. I'd walk into a courtroom and be like, he's guilty, arrest him. So I chose computer science. I shuffled my degree around. So I finished off with computer science, business science, and information systems as majors.
Okay. You touched on something which is like values. What sort of do you think are your key values?
My key values.
Or core values.
Core values for life. I think hard work is always rewarded. That's one of my core values. I think it really speaks into, there's a common saying like you make your own luck, right? And that's so true. And people really undervalue that. There's a lot of great arguments for why just relentlessly working hard will not result in success in life. And I can see the value of those arguments. But the truth is you need to work hard in order to succeed. You absolutely must. And I think hard work is always rewarded in some way or another, whether that be through skills that you learn, through hardship that you face, or through opportunities that all of a sudden presented to you. A core value for me is hard work is always rewarded. Another one is you should always try and uplift those around you. This is something that I think I learned in gymming with my friends. In high school, you start gymming with mates, you're trying to look good for chicks. It's that normal thing, but you really get 2 different kinds of people in the gym, right? You get the one guy who sees you lifting heavier weights, doing more reps, and he goes, no, that's enough now. And you get the other guy who goes, fuck yeah, man, do more. Like, come, you can do, you got this. Like, I'm supporting you. And I always found myself being the latter, right? I am highly competitive. I do want to be the best, but I don't want to be the best because everyone else is worse. I want to be the best of the best, which means you have to uplift everyone up. That's a very core value for me as well.
And that's very indicative of like society at large, right?
Yeah.
Like there are always those people who want to see you fall and they can't see you succeed past them because everyone believes it's a zero-sum game.
I think it's very toxic.
It's very toxic. So I was going to ask you is how have you coped with it? Because obviously you started achieving things probably like substantially at like a 22 or so, 23, if I'm not mistaken. That's a very young age. And I can imagine you probably had a lot of critique and a lot of sort of people not saying, don't do this. That's too brave of a thing to pursue. How did you maneuver that?
again, I think it just always comes down to having self-confidence and certainty in yourself. And there is a fine line between confidence and arrogance. And I think as long as you're confident, it's really good. You shouldn't be arrogant. But there will always, like, you're not doing life right unless you have some haters, right? You got to have, but it is a challenge, I think, especially something that I still hear very often to this day is like, man, you need to work less, or man, like, you need to calm down. And it's like, who am I calming down for? Am I calming down for you so that you feel better about your achievements in life? Or am I calming down for me? Because it's certainly not for me. I love what I do. Like, this is my hobby. You know, maybe you enjoy playing soccer with your mates. Power to you. I want you to go and do that. I enjoy having a late night coding, you know. That's my hobby. You know, let me have it, man.
No, I couldn't agree more with you. And then your first venture, was that JobMatcher?
Yeah.
So
there was one little one before that where we were just importing and selling like electronic goods. At the height of the Pokemon Go craze, we saw a gap in the market for battery banks.
Okay.
So we imported and sold battery banks very unsuccessfully, to be honest.
So that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
How many failures have you had?
Tons of failures, man. Like, being an entrepreneur is there is no such thing as a failure if you learn, right? If you learn something from it, you have not failed. If you don't learn anything, then it's a failure. But I mean, what I learned from that first venture with the battery banks is don't cheap out, because we bought the cheapest batteries we could and they just didn't work. Simple as that.
So the whole shipment arrived.
Yeah, imported like 300 battery banks. Like 5 of them actually worked. You know, so big lesson there. Put our cash up front, just lost it straight away. JobMatcher was the next one, and that's where we started to learn some real startup lessons. And that was myself, Adam, a good friend of mine, Nikki, and
Nikki being a boy or a girl.
Nikki boy, yeah. So. All right, we really wanted to address the youth unemployment in South Africa first and foremost. That was our goal. And we were young and ambitious at university. We were like, we can build an app and solve youth unemployment. This is possible, right? As you grow up, you realize these things take a lot more than that. And it's not that simple. But I'd say the key mistake that we made was that we built for 2 years without testing with our users. And then we released. And we just hoped that everything that we had built and done up till that time point was correct.
So your first release was an MVP 2 years later.
Yeah, and we had been building for 2 years. Adam was in China, like busy living and working in China, busy coding from there. I was in Cape Town, busy coding from there. So we had like time zone challenges, and then we had Nikki, who was not technical. He was managing more like the finance. He's studying accounting. So it all made sense, but we were just building and building and building, and then we released. And what we had done was actually not too bad. We did 273 job placements in the first weekend. So that was really great. And then COVID happened.
What are these jobs? Sorry to interject.
Yeah, so the jobs were all like promo jobs, kind of. They were all ad hoc pieces of work. So the most prominent one, which we found, and I think we could have found it sooner if we did things differently, was promotion work. It's one of the most common jobs that gets done at university. And when I say promotion, I mean for liquor, for Parmalat in a shop, for drill bits. Like, this is the most common thing that young individuals are hired for, to fill that role and to do. And promoters generally have to do this on a WhatsApp group. They have to drive around and check that everyone's there. And we solve these problems. We made it that you can swipe on people that you want to do the job. So you can like pick people really easily, and you know they're interested in the work because they've already swiped on you. That's how they show up on your list. And then also all of the jobs are geolocation tracked. So you can just see if the person is there or not without driving around and checking up on them. So we solved a very key problem for the promotions industry, but we had tried to build this app for everything. You know, we pictured it for if you needed boxes moved, you know, if you needed help moving apartments, if you needed to clean your house, if you needed someone to hand a tut in for you, you know, and it did get used for that one actually, but mainly it was promotions work. Like the big bulk of it would have been promotions work. COVID hit, promotions work went out the window. We had to make very tough calls on closing that business down.
So let's rewind, because you've now mentioned 2 businesses in which prior you hadn't done the research to be able to execute properly.
Yep.
Rewind to to Ahren before that first one, what were some things you would do differently to ensure that if you found about to start a new business, what would you research and what would you focus your attention on?
Well, the mistake that we make there, going hindsight, is that you've learned the lesson, right? Never in life can you learn the lesson, go back and redo it. So in my maybe controversial answer to you would be, I would do nothing different. You got to just do things, man. Like pick it up, especially when you're young, especially when you're young. Like I started working on JobMatcher knowing that I was going to learn lessons from this and that the chance of success was extremely small. I didn't care. I wanted to build something. I wanted to learn lessons. I just wanted to grab the bull by the horns and go for it. And I think that's really where you learn the best lessons. That's where you make things happen, right? I think too many people get stuck on the research component for forever, or they find a competitor. They when you do that exercise, more often than not, I think people find reasons not to do it rather than reasons to do it.
So you're proposing jumping headfirst?
I'm proposing to jump headfirst. I'm proposing just do it.
Yeah, I can't remember who says it, but there was someone who says it's like jumping out of building a plane on the way down.
Yeah.
So that's what entrepreneurship should be.
Yeah.
But then you had COVID, and how did you navigate COVID? So you decided to shut down JobMatcher.
Yeah, so we decided to shut down JobMatcher at that stage. So JobMatcher was between still being at university and finishing university. So I got my first job in cybersecurity at a company called MWR. Great opportunity, learned a lot there as well. So I moved up to Joburg. My mom got cancer and she wasn't getting effective treatment in Kimberley. So I moved her up with me to Joburg, and we lived together for a while there. And she got really great treatment. She's all fine now. So yeah, everything's sorted. But back onto the job. So was working at MWR and all the while still kind of side hustling and building apps now more with Adam. So in this process as well, found business partners where things worked and where things didn't work. JobMatcher also evolved into a new venture called Project Cuda. That's like the working title. It was literally a project. So we were like, this is Project Cuda. And there we were doing, JobMatcher was for low LSM work, and Project Cuda would have been for the higher, like executive kind of role. So if you need to hire a CFO on a 3-month basis, just to help you figure out some of your financials, or a tax consultant, something like this. So we built a business around that. And the mistake that I still to this day, I know the mistake that we made on that business was that we didn't fundraise. It was one of those technology businesses where you don't succeed unless you raise funding and you establish yourself in the market. And it's very key. My advice to anybody who's trying to build a technology business, or any business, in fact, is the first thing you need to figure out is whether or not this is a business that you need to raise for or not. 80% of businesses don't need to raise, right? And something that I'm noticing right now as a trend, because everyone's focusing on tech companies and fundraisers, that they think you have to raise for any kind of business. That's not true. If you have a restaurant, if you have a service-based business, if you have a goods-based business, I don't think those are valid reasons for raising. And as far as possible, you should try and bootstrap. You have to realize when you raise, you're giving up equity, you're giving up control and parts of your company. And you need to know that the benefit of that is there in the long run.
So on bootstrapping, can a tech company bootstrap?
1000%, especially today. There's so many free services and tiers and things that we can use to test out our ideas that I think you can get very far before you have to raise a cent of funding. And when you do raise funding, it would probably be to fuel a marketing engine rather than to actually build or test your product.
Hello, sorry to interrupt today's podcast. I wanted to give you a quick message from today's sponsor, which is MoMint. MoMint is an accessible, ad-free social marketplace powered by NFTs. Collectors on MoMint can spot potential and curate a portfolio on their own. MoMint empowers creators, communities, and builders to be part of the decentralized future. For me personally, MoMint has given me a tremendous amount of value. MoMint is a social marketplace powered by NFTs, as I mentioned, meaning that creators like myself can show their work, build their following, and earn royalties on the back of our work. MoMint's a space where collectors can spot potential and curate a portfolio of their own, be it a digital portfolio or a digital investment portfolio. MoMint's a powerful hub that empowers us creators to make their dream projects a reality. If you can think of it, MoMint can facilitate it. They have some awesome business partnerships on the horizon, and I think you'll enjoy it. But most importantly for me, MoMint has made an accessible NFT marketplace that is inclusive for all. They've broken down all the jargon and hard to understand technologies into an app that just requires a smartphone and an internet connection. Let's get back to the pod. So Ahren, you mentioned something which is sort of like struck a chord with me a little bit. I'm sorry to hear that your mom had cancer. I carry this necklace around everywhere I go. It's got 4 women's names. It's my grandmother, my adopted mother, my birth mother, and my grandmother. I don't know if I said that. But one of the things that struck out to me is the role that you have with your mother, because I have a very like tight sort of bond and feel to it, especially with women in my life.
Yeah.
Tell me about that relationship.
We're shaped by the women in our lives. And yeah, I'm definitely a self-described mama's boy. I think I'm in Cape Town. I'm far away from home. I don't get a chance to go up to Joburg as much as I'd like to visit them. But, you know, I speak to my mom on like a daily basis. And I think she's played such a pivotal role in me becoming the individual that I am today. In all the strong and tough decisions that she's made in her life for the better, right? Like people, I think what I learned and grew from that is that sometimes you have to make really, really hard decisions and your life will get harder before it gets easier. For example, like divorcing my father, right? Very, very hard decision. She lost a lot of financial support. She lost a lot of support in general, right? And it was a tough decision to make, especially coming from a more conservative background. It's not something that you do. And having 3 kids then to raise. After that, she decided to leave work at DMDL, which is the biggest diamond mining company in the world. It's De Beers. It's an offspring of De Beers. To run her own business. So she herself is an entrepreneur, and she took that leap having, I remember she told me she had like 50,000 Rand in savings total. So she quit her job, having 3 kids to support, to start a new business with 50,000 Rand in the bank. That's like a huge risk, and she took that and she made it a success. And she's created a business that has provided for all of us up until this point. And very, very, things got harder before they got easier. We were eating baked beans and toast daily for a little while.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to make those decisions. And she's someone that I really look up to. And I think she's an incredible mother. And yeah, I really appreciate that I was raised by such a strong woman as her.
Yeah. There's a cool event that happened in your life where you bought your mother a home.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that feeling and the day.
So that was always, I think, this time I'm saying always, but in starting to go through my working career, I set a goal for myself to be able to buy my mom a house by the age of 25. And a strong contributing factor for that was, like I said, things get harder before they get easier. Things did begin to get easier for us in my high school life, towards grade 11 and 12. My mom managed to buy a house in Kimberley that was effectively her dream house. And it was very decrepit, run down. And we had the opportunity to actually make the house our own and to start renovating it, shape rooms. I got to pick like what I wanted my room to look like and organization stuff. And it was the nicest house we had ever lived in. Family came over all the time. It was a real dream. And there was a financial error in her business that meant that she had to sell the house. And I remember that was quite an emotional time for us. And she always, throughout our lives, has kept a very strong face on. But I knew that was something that affected her. And I think she, ultimately we would have liked to have not lost the house. In hindsight, it's great because now she lives in Joburg, doesn't live in Kimberley anymore. It wouldn't make sense anyways. But that was a strong driving force for me to be like, I want to give this, like she has sacrificed so much in her life for us. She's given she's given everything for us. The least I could do is, try and make that count. Try and reach a level of success where financially I can provide in that respect, and try to begin to give back. For all the years that I was a drain, I wanted to be giving back.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like, I resonate a lot with that, because I'm in a different space, because it's a goal of mine to provide for my grandmother. But I know that I'm a couple of years off from getting to that point. But it's certainly very inspirational to hear that. And I say, like, hats off to you, dude.
Thank you.
I think that's an incredible and very noble thing to do as well. But let's get back to sort of your career. Especially after lockdown, you then move into lockdown buzzer.
Yes. So, like I said, I was working a cybersecurity job in Johannesburg as a consultant. Effectively, what my job was to find vulnerabilities in large banks and telecommunication companies and report them to them, right? So they pay us to hack their systems and then give them a report to help them fix it. I then was headhunted by an incredible company called Jumo here in Cape Town. They're a fintech company, and came down and worked as head of cybersecurity or application security in their department, helping teach devs secure coding practices and to run internal cybersecurity testing as well. And at that stage, again, like I said, Adam and I had always been building things, always been working on projects, some just for fun, some will never see the light of day, some code repos we're still sitting on, a few we've sold on the sideline to people who know about them. But we then decided to quit our jobs and start our own development agency. We called it Eb and Air. I was the air, he was the ebb, and that's how so it was Eb and Air, and we were building technology for other companies, and it was really great for us to build up an engineering capacity. And what we found our unique skill set was in learning from all these past lessons, in failing startups of our own. We were ideally situated to be effectively startups as a service. So people would come to us with an idea and we would go, no. You need to do this to test your assumptions, like build an MVP. Don't try and they would come to us with a huge budget and say, cool, we need to build this over the next year. And we'd go, no, slice that budget in a quarter and let's build something within 2 weeks, test it, get feedback, and then use that to continue building. And we have a scalable MVP, and people ate that shit up. Yeah. They loved it, right? Because it worked.
Makes the most sense.
Because it absolutely worked. And then in peak of COVID, every developer friend that we had was making a COVID map, right? And Adam and I at the time were living together in the same apartment. We had converted our living room into an office. So we would both go to our day jobs, come home and carry on working, till 2 or 3 a.m. and then next day go to work, come back and cycle on repeat before we quit our jobs. And we really wanted to do something for COVID. And we were literally brainstorming for probably about a week. What could we do? What could we do? This COVID map thing doesn't really help anyone. It just, it gives you a bunch of stats and numbers. It doesn't inform anything. It doesn't help anyone. And then the president came on and he announced the harsh lockdown and the regulations. And it was like a 22-page document. And everyone was confused. No one knew what the hell they could or couldn't do. There was restrictions around everything. And so we had an idea to simplify that, make it indexed, make it with images, make it really easy to see. To boil it down, it was all about simplicity. Make it accessible to people so they know what's happening. And I still went with my friend Nikki, the same one from JobMatcher. He invited me to go on a little holiday with him. And I spent pretty much the whole holiday just coding, 4 days straight. He can attest to this. You'd go to bed and then come in the morning. He's like, dude, have you not slept? And I'm like, no, I'm going. So we built that in 4 days. We shared it on a couple of WhatsApp groups and it just went viral, man. Completely unexpected. We weren't trying to make something massive or scalable or launch a business. It was a portfolio project. We wanted to do something that we thought was cool. And it shows you when you have something with good product market fit, it just takes off on its own and you'll feel that. And so it took off on its own. We got 1.5 million users in the first 72 hours. And later on we built a UK version, we built an American schools version. So and then we reminded ourselves that it was a weekend project and that we didn't want to like pour our lives into that app. So we exited and took a step back.
Yeah, and you touched on obviously South Africa because you mentioned the president, and it got me thinking a little bit of existing in South Africa as a white young South African, a very ambitious young South African. What is your experience of living in South Africa as an entrepreneur? One, and then two to that, why haven't you looked elsewhere? Why haven't you looked to immigrate?
Being an entrepreneur means you solve problems. And if you solve problems, you want to be in a place that has a lot of problems, right? Africa has a lot of problems, which I look at as very positively, as an opportunity to make an impact. Like I said, what I've always felt from a young age is I want to make an impact. I want to make a positive impact on people's lives. And this is a space where you can do that, where you can build unique products, where you can create jobs, where you can introduce technologies that maybe people think are reserved for the West. They're not. I am white, that obviously indicates colonial roots, but I was born here, I was raised here, I have a kinship with this country, and I love South Africa. I've traveled around to other places in the world, and I would not want to be anywhere else. This is the most beautiful country with the most incredible people, right? It's like part of all the issues that we have is that we have an incredibly resilient population, and we have people who are very positive, actually, because when there's so much happening around you, there's so much negativity around you, you naturally either have to fall into the abyss or you have to build up a resilience and be positive and look beyond that and strive for happiness and goodness in life. And I really feel and see that within South Africans.
Yeah. And the reason why the question is very poignant to me is that 8 months ago, I took a decision to immigrate to London.
Yeah. You're leaving us.
and it's been amazing to leave there. And I certainly don't regret that I lived there. But I noticed that as well, at the time where I moved over, there was like a mass exodus of highly qualified young people.
For sure.
How, I don't know, and I guess maybe this is a bit, I'm maybe might be proposing a question that maybe requires a bit of thinking, but how do you retain young people and keep them in South Africa and keep them sort of as optimistic as you and as sort of willing to sort of fight the problem? Because I've lost that. I've lost that desire to want to stick around and fight.
Yeah.
I'm now kind of living a little bit selfishly, which I know is selfish.
No.
But
first of all, I just want to quickly jump in there and say, don't feel bad at all, right? I have seen how South Africans in particular have made an incredibly positive impact by doing, in a sense, what you're doing, right? So one of our investors, also a very controversial character, and I don't want to get into him too much, but our earliest investor in our current company, MoMint, is Rob Hersoff. He moved to the UK and lived in the UK for a very long time. And now he's come back having built up incredible wealth, incredible network. And he's coming back with a mission to help South Africa. And sometimes it's vitally important for you to be selfish. I've been selfish in my journey, right? I've cut off family, I've cut off friends and made sacrifices to be hyper-focused on being the best version of myself that I can be. Because then what you do is you bring you bring something to the table. There's a period of selfishness and selfishness doesn't always have to be negative, right? So you may emigrate to the UK, make a ton of money, send it back home to your gran, right? That's already, you're sending money, foreign direct investment into South Africa. You're doing a great thing for the country. So first of all, don't feel bad. Your second question was, how do we retain people here? And how do we get people excited and positive about being here? And again, it really just comes around to people who want to make an impact, right? There's other major benefits of staying in South Africa that people often overlook. The cost of running our company out of South Africa is roughly a quarter of what it would be if we ran it out of Europe or America, because costs of living and salary expectations there are just completely different, right? I went to Switzerland recently to meet with investors and I was mind blown. I went to the shops. 2 chicken breasts were the equivalent of 240 Rand.
Yeah.
For 2 uncooked like grocery store chicken breasts.
Yeah.
Here in South Africa, I literally buy a whole tray of chicken breast for like 130, 140 rand, like an entire tray from Pick and Pay. You know, I could feed like a family with all of that chicken. Costs are just much lower here, right? And there's tons of people who do want to stay here. There's tons of people who do want to solve problems and who are passionate about, you know, building things. It's like, also, Cape Town is beautiful, man. Like, look at the mountain, look at the beach, like, look at the infrastructure that we've got here. Like, I think a lot of our problems are isolated within government. And again, we have an incredible population of people here. And I think you can live a great standard of living and you can make an impact and you can change lives by being here. And so I don't think we have to do too much convincing.
I spent a lot of time in Switzerland. I spent a year in Switzerland and I resonate a lot. I laugh because it was ridiculously
expensive.
Like accommodation and all that. But then let's talk about MoMint. And sure. I think also there's a little bit of curiosity in sort of, I mean, I sort of understand it, how NFTs work, but I think Web3, I think there's a lot of sort of jargon that people perhaps don't understand. And I think I was actually having a conversation 2 days ago because I was telling people about our partnership. And this first thing this one girl said, Sarah, she was like, what is the blockchain? And I was like, that's actually quite hectic because that's like really the first entry point is that people don't even understand. So how can you even delve further into NFTs and crypto? Yeah. So first, where did the fascination with Web3 as well as crypto come in for you?
Yeah. So Adam and myself have always like had a role to play in the digital asset space. So selling in-game items has been something that we've done in the past and that we've always kept an eye on. Blockchain technology is something that we were obviously watching very closely, and crypto obviously is closely tied to that. I think the simplest way that I can explain blockchain, if that's a question, like what is blockchain?
Yeah, start, I think.
The simplest way that I can explain blockchain is it's a distributed internet. Like it's an internet that is not controlled by single entities. So the current internet that we live on is absolutely wholly owned, like 99%, by Amazon, Google, Microsoft. These guys literally run all of the server infrastructure that everything you use, like this podcast will probably be streamed on Google servers, like off of Google servers. Now, the blockchain is a way for thousands of individuals to own that infrastructure. And if you own that infrastructure, you also get the benefits of owning that infrastructure. Gas fees are essentially just your service cost of using the infrastructure. That's a common terminology in blockchain. And it becomes really, really important for, I think, the growth of an internet age that we live in. But also what I'm really excited about in Web3 right now is unlocking possibilities that are previously just absolutely not possible, right? So I'll give you a first exclusive here, right? Like I'm going to tell you something that we've not revealed to anyone publicly before. But one of the things that we're going to be doing with MoMint and with NFTs, and this is a great use case of the technology, is you as a creator, right, can raise money off the back of a video. Let's say you release this video and you sell 100 NFTs that represent the ownership of this video. Each of those token holders will now forever receive revenues from the streams, right? If we do it this way, we don't have to compete with Spotify, YouTube, or anyone. The streams still happen there. The revenues are still generated there, right? But what you get to do is give your fans ownership of those revenues and you get capital up front. So now you can take that capital up front, buy a new camera, buy a new microphone, start expanding your operation. Those people bought into you because they were early adopters. They believe in you, right? And now they get the benefit of ongoing revenues forever. So it's like a dividends, right? The reason why I say this has never been possible before is because another interesting thing can happen. Let's say I'm one of the token holders. I can sell that to somebody else. I can lose it in a bar bet. I can send it to a friend, right? I'd never have to sign a legal session document. I never have to consult you about transferring that token. But whoever owns that token will receive the dividend consistently.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like that has never been possible in history before. So yeah, we've got a smart contract. You make one payment to it. It just goes, okay, who are all the owners of the tokens? Split the payment up, pay all of them out.
Yeah.
It's not been possible before.
Am I right in my assessment that if there's a lot of community building when it comes to NFTs?
Yes.
I've sort of noticed there's two big NFT projects in my head that stick out. There's one, the Nulk Boys. If you're familiar with the Nulk Boys, they've got the Meta card. And then there's obviously the Bored Ape, which is the one.
The huge one that everyone knows, yeah.
And what you get a lot from these sort of NFT, if you're a holder, at least let me speak on Nulk first.
Yeah.
But Nulk, essentially, now that if you own a Meta card, you get access to sort of full send lounges, full send gyms, or whatever the case may be. So you get access to a lot of things. And then you have also like meetups. Yeah. So you'll be able to meet up with one, like-minded individuals and two individuals that you can network on a business level with, or whatever the case may be. And then the exact same sort of happens with Bored Ape. They have like events on yachts and whatnot. So I'm right in sort of that assessment that it's very community orientated.
For sure. And those are great examples of community NFT projects that have been very, very successful. I do think that in some senses, those are, again, an example of a Western privilege that is not necessarily directly applicable to an African context, right? Okay. So over there, the benefits you get is like incredible parties, yacht parties, and all kinds of things. Whereas in an African context, I'm far more excited about an NFT project to raise funds to create a solar farm that helps us solve energy problems in the country, and it gives all of those investors continual revenues or growth of their money. And these are the kinds of projects that we as a company are going to be pushing forward a lot more. And these are the kind of use cases that in the future are going to be far more common. NFTs started in the art world for many speculative reasons. Like people, I think it was a good proof case for the technology, but it's now like NFTs to me actually are a lot more suited to replace shareholder structures and to replace corporate governance structures. I think those are the places where massive shifts are going to happen in the NFT space. And one of the challenges that we have right now is saying the word NFT and people assuming that means art.
Yeah, everyone thinks of like a monkey or something like that.
Yeah. Looks like a Bored Ape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also people assume that just because it's an NFT, it's worth tons and tons and tons of money. That's not true, right? An NFT is just a certificate. If it's a certificate of like a mineral, that's worth something. If it's a certificate of my pair of glasses, it's probably not worth much.
Yes. So it's like in shipping, they have things called bills of lading.
Yeah.
And if you own that bill of lading, you own the cargo on that
correct,
on that ship. So it's pretty much like the sort of same premise.
Yeah.
Now, what about the skeptics? Because there's a lot of skeptics when it comes to NFTs.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I guess that's you're doing something right. If like you said earlier, if you have haters.
But also the technology is being forced to evolve very, very quickly because of the skeptics, right? Like one of the first problems that is major, like when Bitcoin came out, people very quickly realized, man, this is super, super bad for the environment. We just have thousands and thousands of computers all day, like running their GPUs on full steam with the hope that they manage to mine a block and earn some crypto, right? Extremely energy inefficient. Now, because of that because of that criticism, that direct criticism from the public, developers have been forced to figure out other ways of doing still very secure blockchain validation on transactions. And now we're moving over to different models like proof of stake or proof of work. The technical details maybe not as important as they're much better for the environment. So the one that we use at MoMint, for example, is 2.4 million times more energy efficient than Bitcoin. It's 300 times more energy efficient than a Visa card transaction.
Okay.
So it's more energy efficient than if you bought a Starbucks cup of coffee.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future of one MoMint and then NFTs?
Yeah. So
you've already touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. So the future of NFTs, I think, is going to be, look, when the dot-com bubble happened, it started because everybody just invested in companies because they were internet companies. I think we're seeing something similar now where people are just investing in NFTs or NFT projects because they're NFTs. And what happened at the end of the dot-com bubble is when it popped, everyone said, oh, what we should be looking out for is good business fundamentals, good underlying value. Like, does this actually make sense? Exact same thing is happening now with NFTs, right? You'll look at an NFT project and you'll go, is this just a collection of like stupid images? Or does this have good business fundamentals? Does it make sense? Does it have like an underlying value, right? So now if that's going to be the future of NFTs, I'm going to invest in projects that have a mineral underpinning, a business underpinning, a community underpinning. They need to make sense. They need to have value underlying the actual product.
Okay, I see. That makes sense.
And the future of MoMint in that world, specifically for Africa, is that we're going to be helping community projects use the technology to build and run and do incredible things. Like I said, solar farms, investing in wine, investing in minerals that are here within the country. A strong goal for us is, again, job creation, and that's a metric that we measure ourselves against, and if we can provide a platform that enables international crypto investment into community run projects that make sense, and alternative investments that people may have niche skill sets in, right? Like you, for example, actually maybe it's a bad example, I don't know you well enough, but many people don't invest in the stock market because they don't understand it, right? But I have a friend, Robbie, who's been a farmer his entire life. And if I had an NFT project that was built around building a farm, and they said how they were going to do this, he could very easily look at that and evaluate whether or not this would be a good idea. And he can choose to invest in that or not to invest in that. He can use his skill set to make informed investment decisions that can grow his wealth. And those kinds of alternative investment streams is I think where all the potential lies.
Yeah. And Ahren, I want to say thank you, dude. I've really enjoyed today's conversation. I think it's very much exactly where I want my podcast to be. And I really hope that the listeners enjoyed it. I'll continue obviously monitoring your career with great
likewise
eagerness. Can't wait to see what you do. I think you're certainly an asset to this country. And I admire the fact that you're sticking it out and you want to solve the problems that this country faces. And more young people need to do the same thing. Me.
We need to call Elon back. He needs to stop pretending like he's not South African. I swear, this guy's literally, he's doing everything in his power for everyone to think he's American.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, you're from Pretoria.
So frustrating.
Where are Tesla power stations?
Yeah. But yeah, certainly did. And yeah, wish you all the best with the rest of 2022.
Likewise. Thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.